What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to teach you how to set up your RDI5 DI box. This is perfect to directly input any of your instruments to your mixer or interface for live performances or recording setups. So because instruments like guitars or keyboards output a high impedance unbalanced signal, the RDI5 will convert that signal to a low impedance balanced signal for a cleaner sound at a lower noise. So if we take a look at the RDI5, you'll notice the two 1/4-inch jacks here. The one that's labeled input is for connecting your guitar or keyboard, and the one that's labeled through is actually used to send the signal coming in from your instrument out to an amp. You also see the volume switch here. So we can set it to 0 dB. This is what we would want to use for guitars or basses. We can set it to 20 dB for line level signals like keyboards, and we can set it to -40 dB if we're receiving the signal from an amplified speaker. And so if we turn it around here, you'll see the balanced XLR output. This is what we would use to send the signal out to a mixer or interface. And lastly, we have the ground lift switch here. We would want to set it to lift to eliminate any hum or noise caused by ground loops. So as I mentioned before, the RDI5 is great to have in our recording setups. So let me show you that first. Alright, so here I have my laptop with my DAW open, my interface to record everything, and my guitar amp that I'm going to be using with the RDI5. So to connect my DI box to my interface, I'm going to need an XLR cable. I'm going to take the female end and plug it into the balanced output of my DI. Then I'm going to take the other end and plug it into one of my inputs on my interface. Today I'll use channel 1. So to make sure the signal coming from our instrument gets traveled out to our guitar amp, I'm going to need a 1/4-inch cable. I'll take one end and plug it into the through on my DI. Then I'll take the other end and plug it into the 1/4-inch input on my guitar amp. And lastly, to connect my instrument, I'll take another 1/4-inch cable, plug one end into the unbalanced input on the DI, then I'll take the other end and plug it into my guitar. Now since we're using a guitar with this setup, I'm going to leave the volume switch at 0 dB. Now most interfaces allow you to directly input your guitar to record, but using a DI box like the RDI5 gives us the added benefit of sending our guitar signal through to our guitar amp. So if you do plan on recording your guitar amp as well, you're going to want to plug in your mic into the next available channel on your interface. And because we're using a condenser mic, we'll want to be sure to turn the phantom power on our interface. You'll also want to make 2 audio tracks in your DAW, one for your DI box and one for your guitar amp. So now let's go ahead and turn on our guitar amp. You'll want to be sure to raise the volume knob as well as your master volume. Then on our interface, we'll want to raise both of our gain knobs here. Next, you'll want to be sure to record enable your tracks. So now if I play my guitar, you'll notice the signal coming in from the DI box and the signal coming from our guitar amp. So now all we have to do is hit record. And like I mentioned, the RDI5 also comes in handy for live performance setups. So let me show you that next. Alright, so here I have my powered mixer, a couple of passive speakers, along with my guitar amp that I'm going to be using with my RDI5. So just like with our last setup, I'm going to need an XLR cable to connect my DI box to a channel on our mixer. Today I'll use channel 1. Again, to send the signal from the guitar to the guitar amp, I'm going to take my 1/4-inch cable, plug one end to the through, then take my other end and plug it into my guitar amp. And then to connect my guitar, I'm going to take another 1/4-inch cable, plug one end into the unbalanced input on my DI, then take the other end and plug it into the guitar. And just like my last setup, I'm going to mic up my guitar amp as well. So I'm just going to take the XLR from that guitar amp and plug it into the next available channel on my mixer. And again, since we're using a condenser mic with this setup, we're going to want to turn on the phantom power on our mixer. So then I'm going to want to raise the gain and volume faders on the channels we're using. Then to hear everything coming out of our speakers, I'm going to raise the main left and right faders. So next I want to raise the volumes here on my guitar amp. So now if I go ahead and play my guitar, you should be able to hear it coming out of our speakers and our amp. Now we can even use stereo instruments like keyboards or synths with 2 RDI5s to connect to a mixer or interface. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is take my 2 1/4-inch cables. I'm going to take 2 ends and plug them into the left and right outputs on my synth. Then I'm going to take my other ends and plug them into the 1/4-inch inputs on each RDI5. And because we're not using any amps with this setup, we don't have to use the through connection. And remember, since we're using a line level instrument, we'll want to set the volume knobs to -20 dB. So now we're going to take 2 XLR cables, take the female ends and plug them into the XLR outputs on the RDI5s, then take the male ends and plug them into any 2 channels on your mixer. Let's use 1 and 2. So let's turn on the mixer, and then we'll turn on the synthesizer. Next, we'll want to raise the gain and volume faders on our channels. Then to hear everything back, we'll want to raise the main left and right faders on our mixer. So now if I go ahead and play the synth, you should be able to hear it coming out of our speakers. Now, if your synth or keyboard has a mono output, you could just use 1 RDI5 with 1 channel on your mixer. So I hope this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your RDI5 DI box. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, guys, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.